while back, I was on a trip with a couple of my friends, and our little road trip buddy adventure journey took us through Southern California. We went to Hollywood, and we were there walking up and down, I guess it's just called Hollywood Boulevard. Is that the name of the place where they have all the stars? Let's call it Hollywood Boulevard. We were in the Hollywood place with stars. And there's Spider-Man, Batman all over the place. It's a pretty goofy scene. And then a guy walks up to us and strikes up a conversation. It's like, hey, I work for this particular talk show. You guys look like the kind of people that we want to have in our studio audience for that. We're shooting here in X amount of time. We'd pay you a little bit of money. You want to be on the show? We're like, yeah, heck yeah. So we drove over there to one of the studios. I think it was Fox, but I don't remember for sure. And we drove in past a bunch of places where they were filming things. That was pretty cool. And then we got to the building, the studio where they were filming this particular show. We went in and kind of casually did a little meet and greet with the hosts. One of them was real cool. Another one was really not cool. And then we got introduced to a comedian who was kind of the MC, the host for us. And he went on to gained some fame and notoriety. I saw him around a lot more in the ensuing years. I think he passed away recently, but he was the hype man, and his job was to tell us what emotions to have and when to have them and how intensely to have them. And I didn't like that at all. I mean, come on, you've hung out with me for a while here. You can imagine that might not be my favorite kind of thing ever. And it was a pretty formative moment for me, seeing how the sausage was made and the fakeness of the whole thing, which I guess I could have deduced from a distance, but instead I saw it there. But whatever the case, there were some segments on the show where people said stuff and espoused ideas, and I was like, yeah, I don't think that. I'm not going to clap. But clapping was mandatory. Clap, cheer. And you were supposed to yell like things like, let me see if I remember, woo! You're supposed to yell like, woo! That was one that people seemed to really like. Woo! No, that might have been the only one you were supposed to yell. You were supposed to clap and yell woo a lot. I didn't yell woo at all, but I clapped for some other things that I was neutral toward, but I just didn't like a few of these ideas. I was like, no, I'm not lending my voice to that being something I'm in favor of. So I sat there with my arms folded, and I got talked to by this comedian, got warned a couple times, and ultimately I made it through the show without getting kicked out for not pretending to respect ideas I don't respect and hold opinions I don't hold. Maybe you have found yourself in a place at some time in life where culturally everything about what's going on around you says that you need to pretend to like a thing you don't like. You need to pretend to think that the thing that's happening in front of you is a super idea, or that the disreputable person in front of you is a super person. Or maybe it's just something you're uneasy about and you don't want to have any opinion about it yet, but you feel pressure to act like you do have a certain opinion. If you have ever felt that, you can relate to how I felt in that moment. And I suspect that probably you can likewise also relate to how Mordecai the Jew felt in a given moment when he was interacting with Haman, the recently promoted Agagite, in the citadel at Susa. And this moment where Mordecai is in a decision-making moment where he has to decide, am I going to pay honor to this guy or am I not, is something that's going to have much greater consequences than getting kicked out of a sports talk show. It's going to have consequences that are very, very far-reaching, not just for himself and his family and indeed his entire people group, but his decisions are going to have consequences for the entire fate of the entire redemptive plan ever. I've never really been in that kind of a situation, so let's see how this plays out. All right, Esther 3, verse 1. After these events, King Xerxes honored Haman, son of Hammedatha. I think I've said that different every single time I've read it. The Agagite, elevating him and giving him a seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. Okay, Agagite, once again, where we landed after 3 days of talking about it, is we know that it is meant to signal to the original audience and to the attentive modern reader that this means that Haman is disfavorably disposed toward the Jews. He doesn't like them. He's anti-Semitic in his orientation, either because of a long-standing ethnic grudge as one of the last few survivors of this age-old enemy, this cousin people group of the Jews, or that said cousin people group, an age-old enemy of the Jews, lent their name to all future people in the Persian exile era who just didn't like Jewish people and wanted to see bad things come to them. So we're tipped off right off the bat that this guy, it's not right that he got this promotion and that Mordecai did not, although there isn't anything here to indicate that he gained it by nefarious means. I've read some stuff and I've seen some portrayals of Haman whereby he's held out as having done something like real bad, like he knocked somebody off or he greased some palms or he did something he wasn't supposed to do to get this gig. And I just don't think the text gives us that. There's a bunch of stuff here in the early going of Esther where we really aren't getting any kind of moral qualification. I think this is another one. He's an Agagite, so that's not good, but maybe he was really good at his job and that's how he got this promotion. And maybe the reality of the situation is it should have been a both-and thing. Both Mordecai and Haman, maybe both should have been promoted. Maybe he was terrible at his job. I don't know. The author just doesn't tell us that. There's more than enough, though, in the rest of the book of Esther for us to evaluate him based on what he does once he gets power, to say, yeah, that's not a good guy, and he kind of has whatever ends up coming for him, as opposed to imagining something in the story here that we just don't have any sources, or there's nothing that we can look at to say he must have gained this by nefarious means. So for whatever reason, he catches the king's eye and he gets promoted. Mordecai does not, and he gets this seat of honor higher than all the other nobles. Well, there we go again with that theme of access to the king. Herodotus, Ctesias, everybody who writes about this era in Persian history and world history agrees. They paint the same picture. Access to the king is the greatest commodity anybody could have or trade in at this point in history. Esther has kind of won that lottery already. Looks like things are going to be good, but now that's immediately counterbalanced by someone who has a grudge against the Jews, and he gets this seat of honor higher than that of all the other nobles. I don't think that's a metaphor necessarily. I think literally the seat of the most honored advisor to the king, the person with the most access to the king, probably would have been physically higher and physically in closer proximity to the king in the noble court. So that checks out. Good for that guy. It's great. Super. Okay, verse 2. All the royal officials at the king's gate knelt down and paid honor to Haman, for the king had commanded this concerning him. All right, so now we're back to the gate. I'll tell you whose territory the gate is. Mordecai. Mordecai dominates the gate. His gate game is A+. And one time he dominated it so hard, like, when was that anyway? Oh yeah, 2 verses ago, that he actually caught some people who wanted to kill the king. So this is his turf. He knows what's going on here. Well, here comes Haman from another position, another department. He's not gate guy, and he's going to roll into this space. Let's just be honest about human emotion and how you feel at your job or in your social circle or on your team or at your school. When you've got a little area carved out where you've got a reputation and you've done things right for a long time, and then some hot shot from some other department comes in and starts wanting to take credit and tell everybody in your department what to do, how do you feel about that? Not good, right? It's threatening, especially if maybe you don't think they totally deserve the promotion, or maybe you think you should have been the one that got the promotion. Well, I think in this situation, all spirituality and good behavior and noble reasons aside, I can imagine that someone like Mordecai might feel some of those very human emotions, and the characters in this book are presented as being very human. Vashti, Mordecai, Memucan, Xerxes, Haman, they all got a real deep streak of relatable human nature. I can imagine being him, and I would not like the way this situation is shaping up at all, especially the fact that the king was like, he's to be honored, so you're supposed to bend the knee. Now, right now, all of you who have read through the Bible, maybe those of you who listen, who actually do the church thing and live a Christian life and care about how the Bible informs deeply difficult decisions that you have to make and that you face in your life, maybe your mind goes right to Romans 13. It's a passage where the Apostle Paul talks to the Christians who were right under the nose of a violent, persecuting emperor who was and would later do even more horrible things to that little fledgling Christian community shortly after the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. And some people look at that passage in Romans 13 and they're like, that's just Paul saying, just do whatever the government says. I happen to think that's not the best read on that passage, but I know many people just view it that simply until push comes to shove and that particular interpretive framework for Romans 13 breaks, and it will break given the behavior of governments. But maybe you're starting to feel a little moral conundrum happening here from your larger view of the Bible, and you're like, wait a minute, that means Mordecai, who is a Jew, is going to be expected to applaud and bend the knee and fawn and fall all over himself to show respect to this person who doesn't like the Jews, maybe even wants to get rid of the Jews. But maybe there's another part of the Christian moral equation that you're running in your head right now, and you're like, but wait a minute, nobody should receive honor other than God. I mean, should you really kneel to anybody? Maybe some of you are thinking that. What's happening is that you and I are on a collision course for some oft competing ideals within Christian moral thought as it pertains to the relationship between the follower of God and the power of the state. And, well, frankly, I find that little intersection to be very interesting. And we're going to talk more tomorrow about all of that. Here's what you need to know, though. Verse 2 wraps up like this: but Mordecai would not kneel down or pay him honor. Was it the right call? Was it the wrong call? Why did he do it? But the bottom line is this is a fateful decision, and Mordecai in that spot, like I was at when I was in the studio audience on that talk show, and on that spot that no doubt you have been in many social situations, he's got to make a judgment call. Am I going to play along with this thing that I don't like? Whether the reason he doesn't like it is noble or not is something we're going to debate and work through. Or am I going to go along with this thing to save face and be a part of the current thing that everybody likes so I can show everybody that I have the right opinion about the things and that I am on board with the one approved opinion? Well, at times, I suppose I've made both of those decisions in response to this kind of a situation. But in this particular situation, Mordecai makes the fateful decision to be like, not this time. I'm just not doing it. And this simple little lack of this simple little gesture is going to have very far-reaching consequences. More on that next time around. As is so often the case, I have one quick little thing on the way out the door, and it is that I would really like to direct you over to my new website. It's not really a new website. I've had it for years and years and years and years, but I just got done doing a huge overhaul on the whole thing. Everything I'm a part of is all there. I think it's organized really well, and this is what I'm going for. The work was that I'm trying to transition that website from being something like the rest of social media where everything just goes over the waterfall and it gets published and then it happens and people notice it and then it just slides downstream and then the next thing happens, like a Twitter feed or a Facebook feed or a podcast feed. But I've put a lot of work into this stuff, and I would like to think that it would be useful in a way that was more like a resource and less like a waterfall. So we've put a ton of effort into organizing up stuff from the vast history of my YouTube channel, from the different series that we've done here. I think it's pretty user-friendly and straightforward, and I would be super honored if you would go and take a look at that and just make a mental note of it. Maybe it's a resource you would have a use for now or down the road. You can get there by going to thetmbh.com, but I added another URL just to attach my own name to it. They go to the exact same place, and that is matt-whitman.com. So thetmbh.com or matt-whitman.com. Hopefully both pretty easy to remember. I'd be grateful if you'd take a second and go check it out. And if you have any feedback for me about ways that we could build that out better or tweaks that we could make, I would be all ears. I would love that feedback. All right. Thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour Podcast. Let's do this again soon.